Hi, my name's Al, and this is a Parent's Guide to Estate Planning, Part 1. In this part, we're just going to give an overview of the series and describe the estate planning model. The topics we'll be addressing are the estate planning model itself, which involves looking at transitions and the objectives we want to accomplish in those transitions, and different scenarios that we apply to the model. These scenarios would include when one parent is incapacitated or deceased, when both parents are incapacitated or deceased, and in that hopefully rare and unlikely event that the entire family group does not survive. Then we'll summarize what we have talked about and identify some action steps to move forward. The estate planning model itself is fairly simple and straightforward. We start with where we are right now and look at the transitions in terms of what happens in the event of an incapacity, and then a death, and then the survivors. In each of these transition stages, we want to look at several key objectives. These objectives include who is going to make decisions when you are not available to make those decisions, either for yourself or for the rest of the family. Then we want to look at how the property is going to be managed, what taxes are going to be involved, how do we manage conflict in all of this situation, and then what procedures are used to accomplish our objectives. Going into this in a little bit more, in the present time, we want to look at how things are organized and what structures are in place. We want to look at your income primarily to make sure that your income will be sufficient for your family and your survivors. We look at property ownership, whether that is owned in your individual name as tenants in common or joint tenants with right of survivorship. And we also want to look at the beneficiary designations of your life insurance, your retirement plans, and any other assets that you may have that have beneficiary designations associated with them. When we start looking at planning for incapacity, it's important that we understand what incapacity is. It's simply that time when it's determined that you are not able to make decisions for yourself. And that may be because you are not able to communicate those wishes, or it may be because that there is something that is physically or mentally preventing you from processing all of the information necessary to know what your situation is. This applies in two separate flavors. The first is healthcare decisions, and the second is with respect to financial decisions. And related to this is a conversation about what your particular last wishes are. This, more than anything else, is probably where we see family conflict arise, and it's one of those things that can be dealt with fairly easily, but you have to make that step. Then we look at planning for what happens in the event of death. And here we're looking at the coordination of the assets, making sure that everything fits into the place where they are supposed to go. We look at how taxes are going to be applied. What the procedure is becomes a significant factor to talk about, whether or not we can do this in a probate fashion or if we can do it in a non-probate fashion. For the survivors, well, again, we are first concerned about the surviving spouse and wanting to address the issues associated with them, and for the children as well. In terms of minor children in particular, it's important to recognize that they will need a guardian. A guardian is someone who takes care of the physical needs of the child: food, clothing, shelter, those types of things. But there's also a trustee who is responsible for managing the assets. And I will repeat this several times throughout our series here, but minor children are deemed incompetent under the law to manage property. And if you have, for example, your children your minor children as beneficiaries of a life insurance problem or life insurance policy, you've created a major problem that we really should get cleaned up. Then we also want to address that issue of ultimate takers. By that I mean in that event that your entire family group is taken out, what happens to your property at that stage?